So for those of you on Zoom, anyone here in the room, anybody have something to drink during the break? Is it Michal?
Yeah,
Michal?
Michal or Mike, whatever works.
Sorry, how do you say that, Michal?
Michal or Mike, as everybody calls me anyway.
Oh, I see. That's right. You did used to have Mike on, but Michal,
Yes,
that's
yes.
fine. You had something to drink during the break?
Yes.
How did it taste?
Tasted great, but also made me realize that my renunciation isn't really that strong. Because as I was thinking, oh, maybe that's my last cup of tea, then I was like, okay, I'm gonna make myself another one right away.
It's so interesting when you start working with the mind and really, or like, if this is my last cup of coffee, it's really good cup of coffee. It's like every sip, this could be it. And sometimes it's like that. It will be it one day. So if we're practicing now to think that way, then you're more prepared. But we don't. We're just going through blindly, so we have to just keep working on it. And I know it's tiring, but what else is there to do? And I just also, so do you know the yogi tea bags? I don't know, what does it look like? Some people know that this one. It's called Yogi, the company, and they make all kinds of teas. Okay, some of you drink. So I opened up this Yogi, but the Yogi tea bags, they have messages on them. Okay, I always like the mess. I always read the messages. I took some with me on retreat last year, and I'd be like, "What's my message today?" And today my message is, your deep inner self is your brightest light. Okay, I mean, there are messages like that. Okay, but that's for everybody, that message, because it's your deep inner self. That's who you really are, not who you think you are, not this other thing, but who you really are is your brightest light. Your Buddha nature, let that shine out. All of your goodness, all of your loving kindness, the highest manifestation of your wisdom, spaciousness, peace of mind, all of that is in you. It just gets obscured. Just obscured. We have different veils of it, and we all know different people. Some of them are kinder than others, correct? People, because they have less veils over their Buddha nature. Whatever karma, whatever activities they have activated in this life and past lives, okay, they've been able to do some more effective work that has released them from more tension and delusion. So that's for all of us, is that inner, so we have to start making that inner world manifest through a meditation practice, through getting into some of these, different passages of study, really, and putting it all together. And it takes time, takes effort. What else is there better to do? I know it's fun to go out for dinner sometimes, and that's okay. You can do that, but within reason of, and look, and so if they don't have the favorite drink that you wanted to order, that's why you went to the restaurant before. How's your mind? Are you okay with that? And you're flexible and you go, okay, well, okay. Nice to the wait person, the server, or is it upsetting for you? Oh, well, that's why I came here. You hear people. Oh, you don't have that entree. My entree's cold. So how do we want to be into our daily lives when things don't go well? And so this was the FPMT message that, the news they send out, latest news. I get it almost, you get it every day or. Okay, and this just happened. This is for us, Lama Yeshe, defeating the 8 worldly dharmas. We talked about this last night. The 8 worldly dharmas. Okay, what do you remember about the 8 worldly dharmas? It's amazing. It went in and it went right out, didn't it? Isn't that amazing? We're just not trained to be working on I need to. So when you listen to Dharma teachings, we learned this early on, is there's different ways you listen. And partly they'll also say you want to, I'm not a Buddha, okay, but you want to kind of see the teacher as somebody that can teach me something, somebody that may know more than I know. And obviously it's great if you have a highly realized teacher, can see them as an aspect of the Buddha. So, but they're like the doctor. So you basically came here with an agreement of like, I maybe need some help and need to figure out what's going on. I'm going to die. And there's somebody else I'm talking to separately that I work with online that contacted, some of the older people contact me and suddenly like, I realize I'm going to die and I need to sort my practice now. Like I've got to get to it. Waited too long. And so we have these moments. So you come to somebody and we often go to the doctor for some sorting. So the doctor gives you medicine, the teaching, Dharma. Okay. So some people leave the doctor and they give you advice. They give you, you know, here's what you need to do. Like, here's the medicine, but you also need to take the medicine and then you need to get some exercise and you need to do this. And so how many of you follow the doctor's advice when you get something like that? She's laughing. She's laughing. How's it going for those of you online? You follow the doctor's advice? Yeah, Sabrina, you're doing that? Sabrina's like, not always.
Yeah, not always.
not always. Yeah, and how many people, there's a number of people I know, and I used to manage my parents' medical care, you know, taking them to the doctor. And so hard to get them to follow it. I'm like, but mom, they told you to take it after you eat something, you know. No, I'm going to take it in the morning. You know, and then she's nauseated or dizzy from the medicine. I'm like, that's not what it says on the medicine. Like, or my father wouldn't, you know, just people do stuff like that. So you come to the Dharma teaching, you come for the medicine. You're not going to you're not applying. Like, you just come and we sit there often. I've done this myself, you know, I'm just kind of a blob, tired, whatever. But they also say, we have these analogies of the 3 pots, right? How you listen to teachings, the 3 pots. So think about it. You come in the Dharma teaching, you've got the pot with, and correct me, I always get these mixed up. You've got a pot with a hole in it. So there you went, the 8 worldly dharmas. It went in and it went right out the hole. Nothing retained in the pot. There's your nice tea, but it's gone. Okay, so sometimes we listen like that, not listening well. Sometimes I have a dirty pot. And that means I've got all these other thoughts going on during the teaching that I'm thinking about. So I'm not focusing, you know. Now you have people online. So what they're doing is, while they're there on camera, they're really doing something else while the teaching's going on. They don't hear any of it. They don't hear any of it. Dirty pot. Then sometimes you have the lid on too tightly. Pot. And this is where you show up at the teaching, I know everything. You know, this is really not going to help, or I don't really buy any of that, what she's saying about those prayers and stuff. So it's hard to it's one thing to be not sure about something, not sure about reincarnation. I don't really know if I believe that yet, so I'm just going to put it over here on the shelf to revisit later. But these other things I kind of understand. So think about how you want to listen. So back to the 8 worldly dharmas. What do we remember? Okay, we've got 4 pairs of situations. Okay, we are, and this is the literal Tibetan way of talking about it. I am happy when I feel pleasure. I am unhappy when I feel pain. So it really makes it like that. But we call it pain and pleasure, but it's really being happy when the positive thing happens, being unhappy, the negative. The second pair, what do you remember the second pair?
Praise and blame.
That's the third one. That's great. Gain and loss. Thank you. No, this is great. You got something went in, right? So I'm happy when I get something. I'm unhappy when I lose something or when I don't get something. Gain and loss. Third pair, praise and blame. I'm happy when I hear, and it actually says, I'm happy when I hear pleasant sounds about me. And I'm unhappy when I hear unpleasant sounds about me. Praise and blame. And then I'm happy when I have a good reputation. I'm unhappy when I have a bad reputation, or fame and dishonor. 8 worldly dharmas. Here's Lama Yeshe. I'm just going to read a little bit of this.
Maybe it's also nice to mention that actually this teaching was given in 1980 at the Maitreya Institute, but not here. But
and Holland in 1980. That's right. That's what it says. There you go. A little promotion for the center at Maitreya Institute. These teachings happen. Thank you. That's a long time ago. She's a good director. That's why she's saying, you know, she's right in there. Thank you. No, that's so 1980, you can imagine. That's before I met the Dharma. That's a long time, you know, amazing. So this still pertains. This is still our lives. This isn't an older teaching. I just want to read a little bit from this teaching. Just think about this. The attitude behind the 8 worldly dharmas, because we don't know, we're manipulated by them all the time. manipulated by them all the time. The attitude behind the 8 worldly dharmas or 8 worldly phenomena, they'll say, right, is a symptom of ignorance and ego. Okay, it's not healthy, not healthy at all. We have to recognize it as negative motivation. Okay? For example, if you have an attitude that receiving a present is a source of pleasure, you know, we like to get stuff, right? And not receiving one is a cause of unhappiness. Okay, that's not good. Okay, so that's your ego. You know, how come she got that? I didn't get that. You see, the ego gets activated. Another habit of your ego getting activated with that. So you fall into that cycle again. It leaves another imprint. Again, you know, somebody gives you something, you know, and somebody gives you something you like, and we're all, oh, great, how wonderful. It doesn't mean you can't give people things. That's your generosity. That's wonderful. But how do we want to? And it's also, you do need to receive so someone else can give. I can't just constantly be like, no, 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 you know, because then people have that opportunity to give. Venerable Roger and I always had this thing. I'm sure he does this with other people as well, but Lama Zopa Rinpoche's main attendant, Venerable Roger, is amazing being. And so I would make an offering to him. I have an envelope, cash offering, you know, it's a proper way to nice envelope. And I would see him something, I'd be, and he didn't, and then he'd be like, oh, no, 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 you know, and then he'd say, and I said, no, no, you have to accept it. Bodhisattvas, you need to. So then he'd say, okay, thank you so much. And I'm offering it back. And we'd be back and forth for hours in a hallway of like, you know, trying to make the offering, but it's kind of cute when you can play with that with Dharma practitioners. So again, motivation, for example, okay, and first of all, this attitude does not understand what is a gift and what is not. It functions at a very gross level. Okay, so, and again, like partly what he's talking about is the emptiness of the gift. You know, but we attach to it. If it's something you like, you know, you give somebody the chocolate or the ice cream cone and, you know, huge, like inherently existent chocolate or ice cream cone is there. I want that. I know, like totally out of proportion. And an ice cream cone or chocolate is mundane. Okay, but I've also seen, and this sometimes happens with younger children or other people, is you get a gift and you unwrap it and you don't like it. How's that working for you? Right, well, that happens, you know. So Rinpoche, I learned the art of regifting from my guru, the art of regifting. He was the most amazing regifter because people gave him everything. People constantly, and you know, you can't keep, so I actually, like at home, have a little regifting area of gifts that people give me that I can't use, or, and then I try to find the right, you just have to make sure you don't give it back to the person that gave it to you. I did that once. Fortunately, it was a good friend. And she's like, oh, well, this is the thing that I gave you when you left for the retreat. And I went, oh, you gave it to me. I was like, okay, then. So, but Rinpoche was amazing regifting. And it was so funny because my old boyfriend, before I got ordained, became one of Rinpoche's attendants. We were still lay people at the time. And so he would come back to where we lived in this little cabin once in a while when he was on tour with Rinpoche, and Rinpoche would like to send a gift back for me. It was so sweet. And he'd bring a gift. So at one point, Brian was telling me that Rinpoche was across the room, and he said, oh, for Amy, wait, you know, something, I'm going to give something to Amy. I want you to take something to Amy. And he had it was like a fake rose that they would put perfume in. You know how they have these things, somebody get, you know, it's a nice thing to give to the guru. It's a flower, but it has scent. And people give Rinpoche all kinds of creative things, that, you know, but you give from your heart. So it's a great offering from your side. So he holds it up, and so it's so funny. And Brian looks at it and he says, Amy, Amy, like this? And then Brian looks at it, and Brian's like, he doesn't know what to say because he knows I wouldn't like it. And so he says, so Brian's like, goes like this, stands across the room like that. He's just honest with you. And then Rinpoche picks up some other thing. It was like some expensive body lotion, a nice body lotion that, you know, holds it up, and Brian's like, that one, yeah, definitely that one. I remember he brought it home, and I'm like, Rinpoche gave you this from you. I was like, oh, so sweet. So, but we don't, and then we impute all the stuff, and then you don't like something. And I've seen children having a meltdown because they got a sweater for Christmas. You know, kids hate clothes for, you know, like mostly they hate clothes, unless it's like little girls with dresses. You know, somehow they love dresses, but my nephew would just have a meltdown when the sweater came out of the thing, and he had a huge tantrum, and because you're imputing this whole negative concept on it. It doesn't exist that way at all. So we don't understand the gifts as well and how they really exist. And Lama goes on to say, you don't understand the broad view that the gift of other sentient beings is profound. If you think that giving chocolate is the only way to interpret giving, okay, if you're not giving chocolate, then you're not giving. Okay, your view is extremely narrow, and that's a problem. So if you don't like what they give, then you've missed the whole idea of giving. Like, it has to be a certain thing. Like, it's just beautiful that people give like that. Another of the 8 worldly dharmas is being attached to pleasant feelings and averse to unpleasant ones, pain and pleasure. Okay, that's not good either. Lama says, for a start, the way in which you interpret pleasant and unpleasant is completely relative. Okay, it depends. That's what he's saying. Dependent arising. Okay. For example, one person considers meditating to be like going to a nightclub. Okay. Going to the beach. Okay. Going to a beautiful restaurant. They find it really enjoyable. Is that how you feel about meditating? Right. She's like, isn't it interesting? There's something like people. So I had a friend recently, last year, I think I visited, I hadn't seen him in 40 years. So very different paths. And he was a little bit maybe intimidated at the life I chose, but he was also interested a little bit. His girlfriend was totally into it and asking me all these questions about. So then finally she got into this thing that I'm about to go on this retreat later in the year, last year, for 4 to 5 months at a very remote retreat center near Mount Everest. And he's all focused on the trekking to Mount Everest and that region and how I'm like an adventure person. And no, I'm going there to do this retreat at a very special retreat center that really works for me. I've been there before. And my guru's holy sister lives there. She's a nun, Anila Rinpoche's sister. So the whole place is so blessed and perfect. And I'm going to do this retreat. And so she's asking me about the retreat part, but he's asking me more about the trekking adventure part. And then finally he hears what she's saying and he says, so you're going to be in this really cold place, really far away from everything, no internet. And I mean, now they have electricity, but he's like with an outhouse, and you get up at 4 a.m. and you're going to be doing these sessions alone, not speaking, for 4 months. And then he kind of puts that all in his mind. And then all of a sudden he looks at me, he's really close to me, and he says, why? Like, it just couldn't, hard for him. For me, so again, it's all relative of what, when you look at your pain and pleasure, it's not to say that chronic pain isn't chronic pain, but people manage it differently. People handle it differently. Kirti Center Rinpoche, this incredible Lama I traveled with, when he got liver cancer, inoperable liver cancer in Israel, there he was in the room. He's like a little beautiful tiny being, kind of small physical manifestation and peaceful. And he was like joyful, saying to me, now I can really practice Tonglen, taking and giving. Like, he had cancer, so he could practice thinking of all the beings on the planet with illness and cancer, taking on their illness and cancer and his cancer, and then offering them all his happiness and peace. And who thinks like that? Like, that's how he wanted to transform his illness, right? And the pain he was experiencing and the, discomfort. It's all relative. Amazing. So, okay, so another person, about the meditating being like going to the beach, another person considers it like being in prison, completely miserable, your meditation practice. So finding certain situations pleasant or unpleasant depends on your attitude, right? Okay. So it's really interesting. It's really nice what, just thinking about the 8 worldly dharmas and that we talked about, how can we lessen that heaviness in ourselves. I want to go on a little bit with heart spoon. Let me share my screen. Just to review a little bit from yesterday, a fool who pretends to be capable, smart, and clever while clinging to the child's play of this life's appearances. Suddenly I'm overcome by the terrifying lord of death and filled with despair, I'm unable to bear it. This is going to happen to me. This is going to happen to me. Thinking I won't die for quite some time. While I'm distracted by the never-ending activities of this life, suddenly the terrifying Lord of Death arrives and announces, now it's time for you to die. This is going to happen to me. Or you can also think, this is going to happen to you. And then here's our trajectory. Here's our lives path. Though I put effort into making arrangements, saying tomorrow and tomorrow, now suddenly I have to go. This is going to happen to you. Without freedom, leaving behind in disarray all my unfinished work, food, and drink, I have to depart. This is going to happen to you. Okay. So think about as well, and I work with people on this generally, and if we're also doing death retreats, longer death retreats and things, just it's so interesting when you have to make some plans. I understand that. Like we're talking about my schedule for later in the year and next year, and you have to do some of that practically. There's no way around it. You know, so I'm also planning, like for travel tickets, I have to book them in advance. I can't just show up at the plane. I want to fly today. Do you have a seat for me? No, these things you have to book. The train tickets you have to book within reason. But there's part of my mind sometimes I think, I don't know whether I'll be on the plane. People will say to me, are you going to the retreat next year? You going to attend the retreat next year? And sometimes if I'm planning to do it, I'll say, I hope so. I hope so. But I don't know. I don't really know if death comes first or the retreat. So you buy the tickets, you book the hotel, you make the plans, right? Do you ever have in your mind that you may not get there, that death may interrupt it? And off you go into something else. And so it's a helpful way of thinking to get your mind ready, because this is coming. This is going to happen to you. So again, look at all the plans we make and look at all the time we spend making the plans. Look at all the time we spend. I just talked to somebody who is doing like a short, it was a work trip plus a week-long holiday, but the holiday was like a few days of that week. But they had work and so their partner's going to go with them, and the booking and the hotel, and we thought we'd go in this area, and I had been to this place before, so they were saying, well, should we stay there? Should we stay here? What was that like, that place that you went? And it was like so much energy. Now, granted, you have to do a little research if you're traveling, if you want to take a holiday. And I know people, and they say you go on and they look at TripAdvisor and they look at the reviews or whatever you do. Fair enough. But how much is it over and over and over of just consuming? I've had some friends that build houses, and any of you been involved in, or you're just renovating your kitchen or a bathroom? So we built a couple of tiny houses at one of the centers that I was running. John was involved at that time. We built a couple of wonderful cabins still there that are doing really well. And one of them, I was heavily involved in it it was a 1-bedroom, like a small, it wasn't like a big house, it was a 1-bedroom thing. The decisions of the knobs for the kitchen cabinets, and what color the kitchen cabinets, and the counter, what color did you want the counter? And I was just amazed. I was kind of like, wow, I didn't really think about this, like when, and what kind of flooring we were going to have, and this, and you could have this, and this could be a little thinner, would you want it thicker? It was for one little cabin that was really not a big deal, so. But people spend ages because and then they ordered the special ones that are the brushed brass color, and that didn't come in. And when it came in, it was defective. No, I've heard this. This is what it came in, it was defective, or the sink never, and then they put it all in and the sink doesn't. And I had a friend, I went to visit her house, beautiful. Okay. Went to visit the house, large house. And it's beautiful. It's fine. They have all the top, the radiant floor heating, everything perfect in it. I walk around and I said, this is lovely. I'm so happy for you that, you know, first of all, I was really happy it was done because the process was horrible for them. Actually, it kind of broke up their relationship. That often happens. One of my friends said to me in their house renovation, I said, how's it going? She had showed me the plans and how's it going? She said, it's going pretty well. I'm not going to have a husband at the end of this, but it's going really well. Like, you know, it's stressful. These things can be stressful. Do they need to be? Does it, like, is it that worth it, all the time we spend on it? So when I went through the house and said, I'm so happy, this is lovely, like the view is amazing, so happy that you have this place. And she's like, well, you know, this doesn't really work in the kitchen. We have to finish. Like, it just wasn't something she was ever, didn't seem to be enjoying. I had a different view of it. I was kind of like, this is amazing, you know, she different view. And then within a couple of years, they broke up, they broke up. And then a couple of years, she sold the house. And they, you know, like all that effort spent, like you have to think about, you know, and John remembers we were building this house at Milarepa Center. And then after the house was done, there was the furnishing. Now, fortunately, it was small. But I can't tell you how many times I looked at the IKEA website more than I would care to mention. Like, I was kind of like, well, I don't know. So, because somebody said, oh, no, don't get that one broke. That wasn't a good table. And so I was like, back to the IKEA website. Okay, we need to, and we weren't anywhere near IKEA. So I had to figure out some, some creative ways to get the stuff delivered because it was too expensive to deliver it. So how are we going to get that in the box and where were they going to send it or something? I remember that whole thing, but it was like, I'm back on the IKEA website and I just really want to do my practice. But so we all have these things when you think about making those plans and how much time, just think if you can rebalance a little better that in those plans, there's nothing wrong with renovating a kitchen. Nothing wrong with it. It's about your attachment to it. You're like, do it and be reasonable. Now, the other thing we did at centers is we did all this work, fixing buildings and building new buildings and building a big workshop. And, you know, you're going to be involved in it. And what I also learned in the process was the unfortunate situation of builders. A lot of the people in those construction things, they're nice people, nothing wrong with them. There's just a habit. I don't know if it's like this in the Netherlands. They don't call you back. They don't like to finish the work, completely finish it. It always goes over budget. It always takes longer than you think. So I suddenly learned that where then I could relax when we finally got to that tiny house project, because I had already done other building projects at other centers. So I was ready for a triple budget, going 3 times over the thing, taking much longer. All these things I was ready for, and none of that happened. It got done. It was the quickest thing that got done on schedule, done in the budget. The guy even cut us a break with, it was amazing, but those things happen. So can you still create a good rapport with the people doing the work, create that relationship that's healthy with them so that it's more reasonable for your mind. And again, you have to remember, if I'm dying at this moment, do I want to have a negative relationship with this person and have that catapult me into another round of cyclic existence with suffering, with tremendous suffering? Cyclic existence will be suffering anyway, but then I'm going to have this stuff to clean up because I yelled at this person and I got upset with this person. So you think if I'm dying, if I'm actively dying right now, how would I want to handle the renovation? You might say, well, I'm not going to do the renovation. No, you're in the renovation. What's my attitude about it? And you could reasonably, and I remember talking to one of the guys, this was at Bodrify, I remember it was like, we were 3 months later, I'm like, are they gonna finish? Put the moldings on can we just finish, please? And get the moldings on the door? And like it was, you know, and the guy's there and he finally comes out, I'm like, okay, great, you know, and he comes up and he didn't come out to do the work. He came out, I don't know, he didn't understand what, and I said, well, you know, it's not done. And he's like, he didn't even get it that it wasn't done. Like I said, yeah, you said you were going to do the moldings, and it was like reminder time. And so, but again, you can work gently with them, then your mind's a little more peaceful, more spacious. Okay? So let's think about the plans and think about, I could be checking out before I even get the next sip of, could be over. Yeah, could be over. Every moment is like that. So it makes that your present moments with people are succulent. Our succulent, I'm here with somebody. This is, so what happens, especially with our closest loved ones, we take the time for granted. We forget. And so many, and there's several people I know where the partner died suddenly. The partner died suddenly. And Rinpoche has a teaching that I think is part of these readings or something where where he talks about the Thupten Pende's mother. When she died suddenly. Maybe it was a heart attack or a stroke. You know, she was older.
Maybe stop sharing screen because.
Oh, yes,
people
sorry.
can't see anything.
Sorry. Thupten Pende's mother. Thupten Pende is a longtime Dharma practitioner. I think he led the last month-long November course at Kopan. He's a lay practitioner who lives in California. He's an old friend of mine. He was a monk for many years and lived at Nalanda, and his mother died. And what happened is she and his father were in their home or somewhere having a conversation, right? And they were talking just like couples, you don't think. And the father, she was over here sitting, and the father kind of looks at something here, and when he turned back, she was gone. Gone, like that. That happens. That happens. So so think about the succulents. If you think about your closest loved ones, how we often take it for granted, but then you're with them, and can there be a moment where they're just talking about something mundane, the same, even if, how about this? Even if they're nagging you. We don't like that. We don't like to be nagged, but even if they're reminding you of that same thing, I always remember what my mother would say that would really get under my skin. And I'd be like, oh, here she goes again, something. And now that she's gone, I would love to hear her say that, right? So just think about those succulent moments. If we can raise that awareness of our death coming soon, could come at any moment. And I'm with one of my favorite people. Am I really hearing them? Am I really seeing them? Am I really being with them? With a wholehearted experience like that. Okay, a little bit more. I fall like an old tree trunk upon my last bed, which I made and slept on just today, and I'm unable to turn over. I tug convulsively at my clothing and friends. This is going to happen to you. So what they talked about also in introducing this text in general, it's got some really unpleasant imagery in it. It's designed that way. You have to think about this because this is going to happen to you. Death has it can have a very distasteful appearance to it, depending on your attitude. Something happens in the birth process, you're born, okay? Some of you have had children. Some of you have been at live births to witness that. Some of it's been your children, things like that. But the baby comes out, there's a tremendous amount of pain for the person giving birth. Yes. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I know there's drugs and things like that, but every mother I know has said it has been greatly uncomfortable. Okay. They get out, there's blood involved, there's fluids involved. It's not the best. You see the kid comes out and they're like green and purple. Okay. They come out, they're all squished if it's a natural birth, through the birth canal versus a cesarean section. But all this happens, but somehow it's a new life developing and all that. And after the baby's all cleaned off and everybody's like, oh, isn't this cute? But death is the opposite. Everything is deteriorating, breaking down, crumbling, wrinkling, not working anymore. Okay. And we don't like that in our culture. If we could see the wisdom in old people, the life experience they have, but that's not our cultures. That's certainly not the United States, unfortunately. Okay, all the youth is worshipped like this. So slowly, these are the kind of things that will happen. And the more you can face it now and think about it. But again, we've got a cosmetic industry that's in total denial of that, making a huge fortune of money because of that. Because people are like, oh my God, I got one little gray hair. Oh, I've got a wrinkle, and that's life. you know. And one of the things I remember some years ago, my mother was alive and she liked to watch these award programs, you know, the movie awards. You know, I remember the, forget what they're called in the United States.
Academy Awards.
The Academy Awards, thank you. So my mother would, and they'd have a show at night, you know, my father would sleep through it, but they would watch in their bed and my mother would say, oh, do you want to watch with me? Do you have something like that in the Netherlands or movie?
We watch the Oscars also.
What's that?
We also watch the Oscars, I guess.
The Oscars. Okay, so so my mother would watch and it's all about glamour and you see all the, you know, the women have spent thousands of dollars on these gowns, the makeup, the hair, everything. You know, it's much more focused with the women have more issue because they have to look a certain way. The guys could just get, you know, a nice little tailored tuxedo and go in, you know. So we were watching and I don't remember, but there was an actress in the States, a brilliant actress named Jessica Tandy. She lived with another actor. She was married to another actor, and she was an incredible actress. And she was somebody that as she aged, she didn't color her hair, and she just became looking like what we might call an old woman. And she was presenting at the Oscars, and she came out, and I just thought she looked beautiful. I think her hair was in a bun, a gray bun, and she was all wrinkled, and I think everybody stood up and applauded her because she was just such you know, and it's like, there she is, that she didn't cover anything up basically. And this president and everybody very much so, but people are afraid of like looking at that and looking like that, and it's not really okay. And people make comments about, and I've heard friends make comments of like, well, he's really aged or she's really aged, or it's like we're aging, you know, every moment. So again, and you will fall like this, and you know, you tug convulsively at clothing and friends. You know, you're freaked out. You're freaked out. My body's not functioning anymore. Some of you have had some medical issues where something suddenly happened, and so for me, traveling, it takes a toll on the body, and so occasionally something will happen. And so at Laudo, it's always an issue when I'm on retreat up at the remote retreat center. There's a few medicines I have to bring with me just in case. You don't know, because up there they don't have anything and they're not near any hospitals or clinics or things like that. They have their own medicine kit there, but some of it could be really outdated and things like that. So I just know that occasionally certain retreats, you know, one time I got a toe infection or an eye infection, and you don't know what could happen up there, something like that. So you're kind of just trying to stay healthy, but these things will happen to you, and sometimes they're not fixable. I have a friend that was talking about, he's older than me, and he had prostate cancer at one point, which is quite common in older men. And then he said he got treated and it went very well and all that. And then he said he also went for another checkup about something else. And he said, and then he stopped and he said, you know, Amy, at this point in our lives, he said, they'll always find something. Like when you go to they'll always find something. It's just an issue of whether it needs to be treated or not. But the system is wearing out. You know, it's not like when you're 11 years old and your body is growing and developing and everything's fresh and new for most 11-year-olds. Some 11-year-olds come in with great disease from a young age, from another life, some obstacle from another life. But generally, so this is standard. And then it says, though I'm completely wrapped in my last inner and outer clothes, okay, I lack freedom to wear them other than just today. When I become as rigid as earth and stone, I see the beginning of my own corpse. This is going to happen to you. Okay, this is going to happen to you. So you've got inner clothes, which you could consider your body, your flesh, could even go more internal. You know, you could even have my internal clothes is my inner work, my meditative state. You know, you got outer clothes, you're laying in a bed, and you know, at the very end, they rarely change you. There's no real need, you know, unless you soil the robe or something like that. You know, so here you are now, and you know, like, this is it. I had a friend that said to me at one point with very bad cancer, when I was taking care of her, and then at one point, she wanted to have a pizza party. She really couldn't eat anymore, but this was kind of her last like happy thing, she thought. And we invited some people, and I think the pizza just made her really sick. She tried to have a few bites, but she couldn't eat. And then she realize with one of the bites, and then suddenly she looked at me and said, I'm never going to eat again. Like she knew that was it for the food. It just wasn't working anymore, you know, because of the cancer in her body. And so when will you realize like that's the last sip? Or when my great aunt, I remember when she finally refused the last sip of water, she didn't need, like I was for 3 days giving her water. She was accepting it, taking it, a little bit of, we call in the States Jello, you know, a soft thing she could eat. And then I remember at one point when she just, that was it, she put her hand up. No more. We just lost Venerable Ingrid, one of our longer term nuns who lived, died in California. And she was originally from Germany and then lived in Canada for a long time. And so when she died, she seemed to somehow, I wasn't in California when she died, but I'd spent a lot of time with her before that. And they said she just suddenly, wherever she was staying in the nursing home, she didn't really like the situation and just gave up and then refused all food and drink and was like over and done in a few days. Just that was it. And I think she could have lived longer, but with care, but just suddenly made up her mind. And people do that where they go, that's the last sip. That's it. I don't need that anymore. And then thinking about, I lack the freedom to wear them other than just today. Okay. And then we will become rigid as earth and stone. Rigor mortis sets in with the corpse, as you know, and then the body won't be able to move anymore. So just think about your basic movements now, but what we're headed for in death is an inability to move. So first you're going to have an inability to move if it's a slow death, just from all those subtle winds absorbing the natural experience. I'll talk a little bit more later about the internal visions that appear, but then when death comes to the body, then you totally stiffen up. Nothing's flowing anymore at all. Though I struggle pitifully to say my final words in Last Testament, to express my sorrow, when with my dry tongue, I can't make others understand, and I'm overwhelmed by intense despair, this is going to happen to you. What do you think about that? How's that feeling for all of you?
Painful.
Sorry?
Painful.
Painful. It's painful and fearful to think about the process. Let's think about it now, though, so I can make sure, let me fuel my practice, okay? Drive it into my practice. So I'm doing the best I can do to get myself ready for that it may be a little less painful for you, a little less painful for you. And as it says again, when I can't make others understand, I struggle pitifully to say, so I've been with people, and think about this, it's a really painful place, even for the caregiver. It's really, so for some people, when the cancer goes to their brain, it affects the speech center in certain cases. And there are people that I've been with at the end where they're very lucid. Like I think they're getting it and they're understanding and they're trying to articulate, and I can't get a word of it. And I just had to honestly say to them, I'm so sorry, but I'm not understanding what you're saying. You know, I'm so sorry. Can you say it? And I've asked them, like, can you say it again? You know, gently, can they say it again? Sometimes it's all their energy to get one word out, to just get one word out. They're trying to say water or something, and you can't understand. So think about that state. If that is you, how is your mind going to be? How is your mind going to be? If your mind says, I'm going to be terrified, I'm going to be fearful, I'm going to be in a lot of pain, then we need to work on it right now, right? You can do something right now. You're not done. You can do something right now. We have to start doing it. So, yes.
I was also thinking how important it is to say the things you need to say to people before you get into that situation.
Of course,
How
yeah.
important that would be.
Absolutely. And that's part of that, the presence of mind. When am I being present with everybody when I'm really with them? You know, what's your experience when you're present with them? I know we can't do it 100% of the time, but really trying to express those things now to people. And it's nice, you know, and being that positive force and saying something reinforcingly positive to people constantly, like some little, and if you're just some little piece to each person that you really love and care about. Every day you can say something. So, so when you're dying, there's not this regret of, I never told him he was the best brother that I ever had. You don't want to have those thoughts left out there that I didn't say. We have asked people, if you're doing hospice work, we've asked people at the end, when you can see they're tormented with something. Sometimes they're not sleeping well. There's even if they're in a semi-coma, the brow is furrowed. You can see there's clenching the jaw. So when they sometimes wake up or they're not letting go, they should pass away, but they're not. Sometimes we'll quietly ask them, is there anything else? Anything else? Anybody else you'd like to talk to that we could make that happen? And now because of electronics, you can make that happen with almost anyone, whether it's a video call, whether it's a voice call. Often they won't be able to talk, but they can listen. And we've done that. We put the phone to their ear. They can listen. They can hear. You sometimes see great relief come over them to hear that voice, to hear to finish the business. So finish it now. Don't wait till then where you're out of control. Finish it now. And this is part of Christine Longacre's 4 tasks of living and dying. The 4 tasks of living and dying, she's included in an old book on death and dying. And I think I'm not sure, Lizette, did we send out my reading list in this course? My death reading list? I'm not sure, but I can make that
No,
available.
not yet.
Okay, so I think I sent it out in the other course I'd done before here. So I'll make that available again. And it's Dharma books on death and dying. First of all, there's so many books on death and dying, as you know, it's a huge field. There's Dharma books I list, and then I list other books. And her book is a Dharma book called Facing Death and Finding Hope. Facing Death and Finding Hope. Let's make a list. And in there, it chronicles the death of her husband when they were early married of leukemia. It happened a long time ago. So the health facilities, the healthcare practitioners in the United States at the time were not as well versed in dying practices and what to say. And they said some really inappropriate things to her while he was dying. And now they're much better. I find it usually most of the places in the States. So she talks about these 4 tasks of living and dying. And one of them is healing relationships. So do you need to do any of that with people? Talking compassionately, generously with people that you care about and love, and fixing any relationship rifts that you've had with people, any mistakes that have gone on, misunderstandings, and really, so creating from this moment forward, healthy communication, healthier relationships as a result, but fixing any stuff in the past that's gone on, because that's going to come up when you're dying. If you have a slow death. I've seen people tormented, they said, I haven't spoken to my brother in 10 years. So why not fix it now if you can? In the very least, one thing you can do is if you do not speak to that person anymore, you don't see them, they don't want you in their life. So you've made some gestures. They're like, nope, we're not talking. You can do the work yourself. Put the person in front of you in a meditation. And over until you feel released from it, say what you need to say. Just gently discuss with them kindly, generously. You can apologize, tell them the mistakes you made, you were limited, apologize. Over and over, if you still need to apologize, you wake up the next day, you go, I want to do it again. And eventually it will shift. It will shift. I had it happen with somebody in my life where there was a lot of anger, whatever, an old breakup, horrible, whatever, was so angry with me. A long time. And then I realized it was eating a hole in me. So I did this meditation over and over. I had him in front of me, all my asking for forgiveness, apologizing for over and over. And then I felt kind of released from it, and then after that, then we got back in touch again. And now he's one of my best friends. It really shifts something. It really does work, those kind of things. So do it on your own, just so you can feel like I tried my best. I gave it my best effort. Like that. just before we break for lunch, any questions right now? Anything I'm talking about, any concerns, comments? Yes, John.
You said there were 4 points from that book?
We're gonna, well, what I can do is, I'm gonna talk about some of those a little bit later, the 4 tests of living and dying. And I'm also gonna give you the third route of the 9-point death meditation. We haven't gotten to that yet. Thank you. Yes.
My kind of challenge when I read these practices is that I feel like there's a lot of resistance within me. So how do you do it?
Sure. Is it resistance just more to thinking about death, or is it resistance to this stuff of
It's
practices?
more death-wise, just feels like I read these things, I think about it, but then I feel like there's so much denial within.
Sure, of course. I mean, that's pretty natural. And I would just explore that as well as like, what parts of it is there a little bit of an opening? Like I happen to read this death book and that spoke more to me. Like I can understand it. It takes time because it's a scary thing that a lot of our culture doesn't want to talk about. We push it away. It's very natural. So just keep exploring and doing some of the meditations and then looking at the resistance a little bit and then gently kind of relaxing a little bit and going, okay, so this is hard. Like, I don't want to die. You know, acknowledge it. But then because I am going to die and there's nothing I can do about it, that is a reality. You intellectually, I'm sure, know that, right? But so then what can I do in my life that will be positive, of some positive practice I can do now that will make me feel good, that I'm doing the best I can do? And then I would kind of drive it into that resistance and say, let me find a part. And if there are all these practices, you're just trying to get started on a small level. Start on a small level, slowly, do the stuff you like first and get that going. Get that rolling for a while. And then you can add something else in and go, okay, this is the best I can do right now. And be happy with that. Yeah, that's great. But it's pretty normal, the resistance. And question.
Yeah, I think similar type of question. So sometimes I'm thinking about this meditation, or like I'm meditating or listening the stories you share, and sometimes it doesn't get through. It's like, yes, this will happen, like intellectually, yes, I understand. But sometimes it gets through and it's more like, I'm like, whoa, I'm very scared. And I wonder how to be more like, how not to be depressed about this, but use it more like a fuel for positive direction.
Yes, so it is normal, especially if I lead like 9 or 10-day death retreats. And we have a little weekend experience here that gets to people. Is a normal byproduct is depression. It should bring you down. That's actually a good sign. So it doesn't feel great, but again, you know, and let it go deeply in. And when it goes deeply in an analytical meditation, meaning you're analyzing, like I just said, this morning we were doing, well, the creative people in the world, they haven't figured a way out. The brightest people in the world didn't stop death. You know, and you go over and over and you're kind of going like, I'm gonna die. This is going to happen to me. You know, so when you get to that scary, like gushy, like, you know, the little, what we would say in the States, an aha moment, like that's a little insight, that's a realization. Then what you need to do is apply your concentration, different type of meditation. So you're not analyzing anymore. But now that I have that feeling, I want to hold that feeling as long as I can. My concentration on that feeling as long as I can. And it deepens the realization. It deepens an experiential realization. I'm experiencing, this is what I'm going to go through. This is going to happen. It's uncomfortable and unpleasant, but better to be prepared for death. That prepares you for death. So then you go through that and you go, well, then it fades. Just a natural fading. And then you go back and you analyze more quickly to get to that experience, because what will happen is through that little insight, it's a type of realization, you will have what's called a contrived realization on the Lam Rim, of that Lam Rim topic. Death is certain, or everybody dies. You'll have a contrived realization. That means I'm forcing it. Meaning I'm in the meditation, I'm making it happen. I'm making it happen again and again and again. And through doing it again and again and again, it evolves into an uncontrived realization. where when I think about death and somebody says death is certain, everybody dies, it arises in my mind. And as a result of that, I'm stepping up my practice. I suddenly realize I better get this Dharma book read. I better do that retreat. I better learn Vajrasattva practice. I better, like, suddenly I'm living that way. That's the realizations of the Lamrim, how they shift your life. Does that make sense? So this is a tough subject. I know this is not easy, but it's the one thing we know is going to happen. Michal, please.
Yes, I hope it's not too complicated. One of my best friends is dying. The chemo doesn't work anymore. The radiation doesn't help. He's kind of dealing with it. Okay. My question is, what would be your recommendation? What should I include in my daily practice to be able to benefit him at least in a small way?
I'm so sorry. So sorry. Is some of the standard practices we talk about, I'll talk about more of them at the end as well, is one of the first things we reach for is Medicine Buddha practice. Medicine Buddha practice. There is a practice booklet. It takes me about 45 minutes to read in English. You can read it quickly. That's okay. It's set up like all the standard practices. There's refuge and bodhicitta, a visualization. You've got 7 Medicine Buddhas and Shakyamuni Buddha. You know, and so what I do is you make a tower over the person's head. You just visualize. You know, the top one that you're reading, you read the names of the Buddhas. So you're starting in that practice with the one on the very top. They're different colors. You do the best you can. You read it. Even if you don't have the visualization right, you read it. Then you recite some mantras. Medicine Buddha mantra, long and short. It's all in the booklet. You can find a lot of this online of how to recite it is online, right? And then what you do is the light rays coming into your friend, right? And whatever karma you can purify, whatever you're just visualizing, that Medicine Buddha will take care of him. Like that, slowly, slowly. That's a practice that I would do, reciting as many mantras or as little mantras as you can, whatever time you have. You do it, do a dedication at the end. That's one of the practices we often reach for, that I reach for first to do. I have done it by people's bedsides. I've done it in hospital rooms. I've read it silently to myself when I can't do it out loud because of other people in the room. I've done it with the dying person. You know, they wanted to do it. They were awake. They could do it. I've done it with a group of people around the body. These are all the different ways we can practice. And then another powerful prayer we like to read as a dedication is the King of Prayers. The King of Prayers is in all of our prayer books. And those are the first 2 things that I usually reach for, is the bare minimum to do. And then if you get in the book that is How to Enjoy Death and Lead a Meaningful Life, this is like the Death Bible from Lama Zopa Rinpoche. It's been put together and reconstructed like 80 million times. There's so much more death materials on the FPMT website than anything else. Maybe death and depression tells you a little bit of, you know, what people bring to Rinpoche and what Rinpoche is trying to get us to do, to actualize. So that book is it's a red book. You know, I have a copy. And so when I'm going to somebody that's dying, if I'm home, that's the book I bring with me. If they're Buddhists and they want things, and I bring kind of my death kit, then I also have it on my phone and my computer. So, and what it has is the first part of the book. Please read that, because it gives you, and I'll make sure you have a link of the book. It gives you a whole overview of what to think about, everything I'm talking about here, but more. What to think about, how to get yourself ready, and the second part of the book is all the practices you can do. So again, Rinpoche likes a lot of practices. Everything is in there. So the Medicine Buddha is in there, the King of Prayers is in there. There's different versions of the Medicine Buddha, but there's other prayers. And sometimes we've just gotten them and we just start reading through, if we're in a group of practitioners around somebody's bed, when they're dying, after they've died, sometimes leaving the body for up to 3 days is the Tibetan tradition, not to disturb the body, to allow the consciousness to leave the body in a proper way. And we are around the body sometimes doing these practices in maybe shifts of people. So Michal, I'll make sure that we all have the link for that book as well, and as well as the death list that I've got, the death book list, I think, and it should be on there as well, or at least you have the link. So,
Thank you very much. Thank you.
and you don't need to be near your friend. You can do it. I've done it for people on the other side of the planet that died. I'm doing a medicine Buddha for them. That's fine. It's really good for our minds as well. Yes, one last question, then we're going to take a break for lunch.
One of my children is very scared for my dad, so his dearest one must stay forever. And it's very difficult to talk with him about it.
So one of
Can
your
I do
children,
something to make it more,
sure, one of your children wants you to live forever, doesn't, or?
yes, that's what he wants.
That's what, okay. So what I would do is, and I've had a number of people close in my life that didn't want to talk about death. My mom was one, you know, and she saw it as morbid. And so I wouldn't bring it up a lot with her, but at times if there was a lot of clinging or, you know, it's just slowly explain to your child, this is a natural process. And the more we can kind of understand this in life, then the less suffering there could be when one of us is gone, you know, the less suffering, and let's just appreciate life right now of our time together and what we can do and like that. So I would just slowly, I wouldn't kind of ram their face in it, as we'd say, in too much if it really makes them uncomfortable like that. You just have to find an appropriate way to discuss or talk about it. And especially if it's your death practices of what you want done and there's somebody that will take care of it for you. If they're not willing to have that conversation with you, then do you have another child that you can, another person that you give the instructions to? Or just make sure there's somebody that you can actually have an open conversation of, these are my instructions, are you comfortable with this? Like that, if they're not willing to talk about it. I mentioned this before, my mother thought death, didn't want to talk about it, it's morbid. I kind of, as she got older, I wanted to know what she wanted for herself. I didn't know exactly. And my grandmother, her mother was really clear what she wanted. Like that was emphasized, we all knew. And then when my grandmother was dying, we carried out my grandmother's wishes, what she wanted. And it was easy. It made it easier because we knew exactly what my grandmother wanted. So when my grandmother died, and then a couple weeks later, you know, my mother never wanted to talk about it. I said, what do you want? What do you know, like, what if you're incapacitated? Tell me I don't want to talk about it. Like, I just didn't know, would she want a feeding tube? Would she want every means possible, or I had no idea. So a couple weeks after my grandmother died, my mother and I were just sitting casually in the kitchen, nothing. And then she was talking about something and things were going well with whatever. And she said, I thought the funeral went well. And then I said, you know what really helped? I found it was an appropriate time. And I said, you know, what was helpful in the whole process of, and I think I said something like, you know, death is such a big deal. And I said, I agree that everything really seemed to go peaceful. And I said, she seemed so peaceful at the end. She seemed so peaceful. And she did, my grandma, she just seemed peaceful. And then I said to my mother, you know, what was really helpful is we knew what she wanted. And then we just did that. We did everything she wanted. We didn't have to make decisions that were like, do you think she'd want this? Or because I was on the phone like every day with my mother and brother. We were trying to make these decisions based on what the doctors were asking us, you know, what was happening with her body. And I said, and we knew what she wanted and we could just proceed. And so it was easier to make those decisions. And I said, and that's why that's why I kind of asked you what you want, so I can do what you want. And then she flat out told me she's ready to lay it out. She got it. And she realized it was easy, that we knew what she wanted, and we honored that. And I said, I just want to do that for you. I want to make sure it's what you want. She just told me very easily, no problem. So you find those times to have the proper conversation at the right time, or find somebody that is open to make sure. And then there's only so much you can do if they don't want to discuss and they're just going to hang on to that. It's the best you can do. Okay, so we're going to take a break for lunch. I know we're a little over time. So we have, is it maybe an hour and 15 minutes, or is that?
As you wish.
Yeah, I don't know if we need an hour and a half. I think the last retreat we realized we didn't need. So let's do an hour and 15 minutes. So we're going to come back at 2:15. Is it at 2? Sorry, at 2 o'clock. Let's come back at 2 o'clock and we'll have 2 to 4. We're going to come back at 2 o'clock and let's just offer our lunch, whatever food. And thank you to all those that brought food here. We can have lunch together. We're going to offer our lunch. And I'm just going to bring my food offering prayers. And I'll share my screen. It's something different. What now? Oh, I see. Okay, let me get this one. Here we go. It's this one, yeah. Go. And all the precious food, let's transform again like we did the offerings this morning. Into blissful nectar that is completely empty of any inherent nature. May the food nourish us, so may we continue our retreat with good health and energy, helping us reach Buddhahood quickly so we can benefit all living beings. It's really for that purpose we'd like to offer the food and practice the yoga of eating lunch to get enlightened, to benefit all living beings, and also mindful eating. Okay, this could be our last lunch that we're eating. And we'll bless 3 times with the body, speech, and mind of the Buddha. There's the Om. Om Ahum. Om Ahum. Om Ahum. Lama Sangye Lama Chudeje Lama Gedunte Koni Jepo Lama Yin Lama Namla Chubar. Thank you very much. So let's say 2:05. We'll come back. 2:05. Thank you.